My boyfriend let his new little sister submit an application to transfer me hundreds of miles away. He called it a prank. I called it a reason to leave. So I packed my bags, boarded the plane, and started a new life without him in it. The email arrived at 4:32 p.m. on a Tuesday, a time I remember with excruciating clarity because I was stirring a pot of risotto, timing the addition of broth with the precision of a bomb disposal expert. It was for Mark, my boyfriend of 5 years. A special anniversary dinner. The subject line was innocuous. Your transfer application, confirmation, and next steps. I frowned. I hadn't applied for a transfer. My career in logistical management was finally stable, rooted here in Chicago, a city I had come to love. I assumed it was spam, some phishing attempt with a surprisingly specific lure. I almost deleted it without opening. Almost. But a sliver of professional curiosity, the part of my brain that triple checks shipping manifests, took over. I clicked. The corporate letterhead of my company, Omnicorp, materialized on my phone screen. It was official. Dear Clara, it began. We are delighted to confirm your acceptance of the Senior Logistics Coordinator position at our Anchorage, Alaska distribution center. Anchorage, Alaska. The words felt like a physical blow. Hundreds, no, thousands of miles away. A place known for ice and isolation. My heart started a frantic, uneven rhythm against my ribs. The email went on to detail a start date, a relocation package, and contact information for my new supervisor. It was all there, neat and tidy and utterly insane. This wasn't spam. This was real. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. A clerical error? A system glitch? Had someone with the same name at the company been the intended recipient? But my employee ID was right there in the email header. This was for me, and it said I had accepted the position. Mark, I called out, my voice tight. The risotto was forgotten, the flames still licking the bottom of the pan. He came into the kitchen, a wide, easy smile on his face. He was handsome in that effortless way, with dark hair that always fell perfectly into place and eyes the color of warm honey. That smile had been my home for half a decade. Smells amazing, babe. What's up? He leaned in to kiss me, but I held up my phone like a shield. What is this? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. He took the phone, his brow furrowed in mock concentration as he read. Then, the corner of his mouth twitched. It was a tiny movement, almost imperceptible, but I saw it. It was the precursor to a laugh. Anchorage, huh? Better pack your parka, he said, handing the phone back. A chuckle escaped his lips. It was a light, airy sound that was completely at odds with the rock of dread solidifying in my stomach. Mark, this isn't funny. My company thinks I've accepted a job in Alaska. This could ruin my career. I have to call HR. I have to fix this. I was already scrolling, looking for my manager's number. Whoa, slow down, he said, placing his hands on my shoulders. His touch, usually a comfort, felt like a cage. It's just a prank, Clara. Relax. The word hung in the air between us. Prank. It sounded absurd, juvenile. A prank? What are you talking about? Who would do this? And then I saw her. Chloe, his new stepsister. She was hovering in the doorway of the living room, a ghost of a smirk on her face. She was 16, the product of his father's whirlwind second marriage, and she had been living with us, or rather, in Mark's family home where we spent most of our time for the last 6 months. She was a quiet, watchful presence, all sharp angles and dark, knowing eyes. I'd tried to connect with her, to be the cool, older sister figure, but she'd met all my attempts with a kind of polite, unnerving indifference. It was Chloe's idea, Mark said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, as if sharing a delightful secret. She thought it would be hilarious. She found the internal job portal on your laptop. We were just messing around. We never thought it would actually go through. I looked from Mark's smiling face to Chloe's smug one. The air left my lungs. They were a team. They had done this together. Chloe, a teenager I barely knew, had navigated my company's internal website, filled out an application for a life-altering transfer, and submitted it. And Mark, the man I loved, the man I was building a life with, had stood by and let her. He had called it a prank. You let her? I whispered, the words barely audible. You let her forge my name on a professional application? Oh, come on. Forge is a strong word. Mark scoffed, his smile finally faltering as he registered the look on my face. It was a joke, Clara. A few clicks on a computer. You just call them tomorrow and tell them there was a mistake. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? My voice rose, cracking with disbelief. Not a big deal? My professional reputation, my job, my entire life here. That's not a big deal to you? Chloe chose that moment to speak, her voice a monotone drawl. It's really not that hard. Your password was just your cat's name and your birthday. You should probably be more secure. The casual cruelty of it, the utter lack of remorse, was staggering. She wasn't sorry. She was proud. She was telling me I was stupid, that I deserved it. I turned to Mark, my eyes pleading with him to understand, to see the gravity of what they had done, to show me that he was on my side. Mark, tell her this is not okay. He sighed, a long put-upon sound. He ran a hand through his perfect hair. Babe, you're overreacting. Chloe is just a kid. She's got a weird sense of humor. Don't make this into a huge thing. We were supposed to be celebrating our anniversary. That was it. That was the moment the floor fell away. It wasn't just the prank. It was his reaction. The immediate defense of her. The minimization of my feelings. The complete and utter failure to see the violation. He wasn't my partner. He was her accomplice. Her audience. In his world, my career, my peace of mind, my trust, it was all disposable. All secondary to a cheap laugh for his new little sister. The risotto was burning. I could smell it. A sharp, acrid scent filling the kitchen. It was the smell of something ending. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and the man I thought I knew wasn't there. In his place was a stranger who thought my life was a a punchline. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. A strange, cold calm washed over me. It was the kind of calm that comes after the storm has already leveled everything you own. There's nothing left to get hysterical about. You're right, I said, my voice eerily steady. It's not a big deal. Mark's face flooded with relief. Exactly. See? I knew you'd get it. Now let's salvage this dinner, huh? I walked over to the stove and turned off the burner. The burnt risotto sat in the pan, a blackened, useless mass. No, I said, not looking at him. I'm going to go pack. Pack for what? A weekend away to cool off? He asked, still not understanding. I finally turned to face him, my expression as empty as I felt inside. No, I'm packing for Anchorage. I saw the confusion, then the dawning horror in his eyes. He thought I was making a different kind of joke, a retaliatory one, but I wasn't joking. In that moment, I realized they hadn't just submitted an application. They had given me an escape hatch. They had, in their malice, pointed me toward the emergency exit. He started to protest, to argue, to backtrack, but I just walked past him, past Chloe, who was now looking uncertain for the first time, and went up to our bedroom. I pulled my largest suitcase from the top of the closet. I didn't know what I was going to do when I got to Alaska. I didn't have a plan, but I knew, with a certainty that resonated in my bones, that my life here, with him, was over. He called it a prank. I called it a reason to leave, and as I started pulling my clothes from their hangers, I knew I would never, ever look back. The first phone call I made wasn't to HR. It was to my Uncle Ben. He was my mother's brother, a retired corporate lawyer with a mind like a steel trap and a bullshit detector that was second to none. He had always been wary of Mark, not in an overt way, but with a quiet, observant skepticism that I had always dismissed as overprotective. I called him from the floor of the guest room, where I had barricaded myself with my suitcases. Mark was outside the door, alternating between pleading and angry demands that I stop being so dramatic. Clara, what's wrong? You sound strange. Ben's voice was a low rumble of concern over the line. I laid it all out, the story tumbling out of me in a flat, emotionless torrent. The email, the transfer to Anchorage, Mark's laughter, Chloe's smug confession. I relayed the facts as if I were reading a damage report. When I finished, the line was silent for a long moment. I could hear the faint sound of his grandfather clock ticking in the background of his study. Okay, he said finally, his voice devoid of surprise. It was the voice of a man who had seen the fine print and knew exactly what it meant. First, do not engage with him further. Do not open the door. Second, I want you to forward me that email from your company and any and all correspondence you have about this. Texts, anything. I don't have anything else, I said. It just happened. There will be more, he said, a grim certainty in his tone. People like this don't just stop. They escalate. Now, about the job. Did you speak to your HR department? No, I was going to, but don't, he cut in. Do not call them and say it was a mistake. Do not tell them it was a prank. Do you understand me, Clara? As of this moment, your company believes you are a willing and enthusiastic transferee. If you call and say, just kidding, you lose all leverage. You look lighty and unprofessional. We have to handle this from a position of strength, not apology. His words cut through my shock. He was right. My first instinct was to fix it, to smooth it over, to make the problem go away. But Ben was thinking like a lawyer. This wasn't a mistake to be corrected. It was an attack to be countered. What do I do then? I asked, my voice small. You follow through, he said simply. You accept the relocation package. You arrange for the movers. You act as if this is exactly what you wanted. But while you're doing that, you document everything. You are now the victim of a crime. Forgery, identity theft, and what's called tortious interference with business relations. These are not small things. The word crime landed heavily. I had been thinking in terms of betrayal, of a broken heart. Ben was thinking in terms of legal statutes and damages. He was giving my pain a name, a framework. It was strangely comforting. Mark is outside the door, I whispered. He's not going to just let me leave. Yes, he will. I'm going to call a car service for you. It will be there in 20 minutes. It will take you to a hotel near the airport. I'll book it now. When it arrives, you will walk out that door with your bags. You will get in the car, and you will not look back. If he tries to stop you physically, you will call the police. Am I clear? Crystal, I said, a spine I didn't know I possessed starting to straighten. Good. Now, about Anchorage. I know it sounds like the end of the world right now, but it might be a blessing, a clean break. Your company is paying for it. Use it. Take the space. We will deal with Omnicorp and the fraudulent application from a distance. It's much cleaner that way. We hung up, and I did exactly as he said. I forwarded him the email. I sat and listened to Mark's voice through the door, his tone shifting from cajoling to wounded to furious. Fine. Be a child. Run away. But you'll be back in a week when you realize how crazy you're being, he shouted. I didn't respond. When my phone buzzed with a text from the car service, I took a deep breath. I unlocked the door. Mark was standing there, his face a mask of anger and confusion. Finally decided to be reasonable? He sneered. I said nothing. I hoisted my suitcases and walked past him. He grabbed my arm. Clara, don't do this. We can talk about this. His grip was tight. For a split second, I saw a flash of panic in his eyes, the look of a man who was losing control. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. Let go of me, Mark, I said, my voice as cold as the Alaskan winter I was apparently heading for. Or, as my uncle advised, I will call the police. He flinched as if I'd slapped him. He dropped my arm. The mention of my uncle, the lawyer, had hit its mark. I didn't wait for another word. I walked down the stairs, through the living room where his father and stepmother were now standing, looking bewildered, and out the front door into the cool night air. The black car was waiting at the curb, its engine humming. As I got in, I glanced back at the house. The lights were on, a perfect picture of domestic life, a life that had been a lie. The car pulled away, and I didn't look back again. The first few days in suburban Anchorage were a blur of beige hotel rooms and bewildering cold. It was late September, and the air had a bite to it that felt alien. I went through the motions. I met with the relocation agent. I found a small furnished apartment for a 6-month lease. I reported for my first day at the Omnicorp facility, a vast windswept warehouse complex near the port. My new boss, a sturdy woman named Maria, with a no-nonsense demeanor, greeted me with a firm handshake. Heard you were a real go-getter, transferring all the way up here from corporate, she said. We can use that energy. I gave a tight, non-committal smile. Inside, I was screaming. The cover letter. I hadn't even thought about it. Chloe must have written one. What had she said? What picture had she painted of me? I made a mental note to ask Ben to request a full copy of my application packet from Omnicorp's legal department. The work itself was a step down, just as I'd feared. In Chicago, I was managing complex international supply chains. Here, I was optimizing forklift routes and overseeing inventory counts for frozen fish. It was tedious, but I threw myself into it with a kind of desperate fervor. It was something to do, something to focus on other than the gaping hole in my life. The texts and calls from Mark started almost immediately. At first, they were apologetic. I'm so sorry, babe. I messed up. I see that now. Please come home. Then when I didn't respond, they became pleading. I can't eat. I can't sleep. I miss you. This is killing me. I sent them all, unanswered, to a folder I had created for Ben. He had been clear. No contact. Every text he sends is another piece of evidence. Let him talk. After a week, Mark's tone shifted again. The pleading turned to anger and gaslighting. This is insane, Clara. You've completely lost it. You threw away 5 years over a stupid joke. Everyone thinks you've had some kind of breakdown. My parents are worried sick. And then came the messages from his mother. Clara, dear, I know you're upset, but this has gone on long enough. Mark is miserable. And Chloe, well, she's just devastated. She looks up to you so much and she thinks you hate her. She cries herself to sleep. She's just a child, and you're punishing her so harshly. The manipulation was so blatant, so shameless, it almost made me laugh. Chloe, the 16-year-old Machiavelli, crying herself to sleep? Unlikely. I forwarded the message to Ben with a single note. The enablers have been deployed. He called me an hour later. I've received the application packet from Omnicorp's counsel, he said, his voice tight. It's worse than we thought. What do you mean? I asked, my stomach clenching. The cover letter, he said. She didn't just write a simple note. It's a full-page manifesto. It paints you as desperate to escape a stifling personal situation in Chicago. It talks about wanting a radical change and a chance to prove your worth in a challenging new environment. It makes you sound unstable and needy. And Clara, she didn't just forge your signature on the application form. She accepted the official offer via email from your account. She wrote back to the hiring manager, gushing about how thrilled you were. I sank onto the edge of my bed. This wasn't just a prank that went too far. This was a calculated act of character assassination. Chloe hadn't just tried to move me. She had tried to redefine me in the eyes of my employer. She had made me look pathetic and desperate. And there's more, Ben said, his voice grim. The IP address from which the application was submitted and the offer was accepted. It traces back to Mark's parents' house. We have a timestamp, 8:14 p.m., 2 weeks before the anniversary dinner. This was premeditated, and both Mark and Chloe were home at the time, according to the phone records I subpoenaed. The cold that had been seeping into my bones since I arrived in Alaska suddenly had nothing to do with the weather. It was the chill of a betrayal so deep and calculated it defied comprehension. This wasn't a spontaneous, silly idea. They had planned this. They had sat together at his parents' house and plotted to upend my life, packaging it as a joke they could spring on me later. What do we do now, Ben? I whispered. Now, he said, and I could hear the flinty edge of the old prosecutor in his voice. We stop playing defense. Now, we sue. The decision to sue was not one I took lightly. It felt like a declaration of war, a final, irrevocable step. Part of me, the part that was exhausted and heartbroken, just wanted to hide in my Alaskan apartment and wait for the world to forget I existed. But another part, a harder, angrier part that had been forged in the fire of the last few weeks, knew that Ben was right. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the principle. You don't get to dismantle someone's life for sport and walk away without consequences. Ben explained the strategy. We would file a civil suit against Chloe, with Mark named as a co-defendant for his role as an accomplice and for allowing the use of his home's network to perpetrate the fraud. The charges would be clear: tortious interference with a business contract, identity theft, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We're not going for a slap on the wrist, Clara, Ben told me over a crackly video call, his face a determined mask on my laptop screen. We're going for significant damages, for the harm to your career trajectory, for the cost of this disruption, and for the psychological toll. We need to make it clear that this was not a prank. This was a malicious, targeted attack. The day the papers were served was a day I both dreaded and craved. I imagined the scene. A process server arriving at the pristine suburban home, handing the documents to Mark or his parents. The end of denial. The beginning of accountability. The blowback was immediate and vicious. Mark's phone calls, which I had been diligently ignoring, turned into a barrage of furious voicemails. I listened to them once, on speakerphone with Ben, as a form of painful but necessary evidence gathering. A lawsuit? Are you out of your mind? He screamed in one. You're suing my 16-year-old sister? You're trying to ruin her life. After all we've done for you, after my parents treated you like a daughter, this is how you repay us? You are a sick, vindictive person, Clara. I never really knew you at all. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. He accused me of being vindictive for holding them accountable for their own vindictiveness. It was a masterclass in narcissistic deflection. The most telling part was his outrage. He wasn't sorry for what they did. He was furious that they got caught. Then the character assassination campaign began in earnest. I started getting messages from mutual friends, people I had known for years. They were hesitant, couched in tones of concern. "Hey Clara," Mark's mom called me. "She said you're not doing well, that you're suing them over a misunderstanding. Are you okay? We're all really worried." They were poisoning the well, painting me as an unstable, hysterical woman who had flown off the handle. They were using my past vulnerabilities against me. I had gone through a period of anxiety and depression after my mother passed away a few years before I met Mark. It was something I had been open with him about. Now, he was weaponizing it. He was twisting my history of mental health struggles into proof that I was the problem, that I was irrational. "This is standard procedure for them," Ben said calmly when I called him, my voice choked with tears of rage and humiliation. "It's called DARVO, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. They are the perpetrators, but they are positioning themselves as the victims of your unhinged reaction. Don't engage. Don't defend yourself to these friends. The ones who matter will wait to hear your side of the story. The rest aren't worth your time." He was right, but it was brutally difficult. It felt like my entire life in Chicago was being systematically dismantled and rewritten without my consent. I felt profoundly alone, isolated not just by geography but by a web of lies. This, I realized, was my rock bottom. Sitting in my sterile apartment, thousands of miles from everything I had known, with the Alaskan twilight casting long, lonely shadows, I felt a wave of despair so profound it was almost physical. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was crazy. Maybe I should just drop the suit, crawl back, and beg for forgiveness for the crime of having a reaction. The temptation to just give up, to make the pain stop, was immense. I picked up the phone to call Ben, to tell him I couldn't do it. My thumb hovered over his name. But then, my gaze fell on a framed photo on my nightstand. It was of me and my mom, taken a few months before she died. We were laughing, our heads close together. My mother was a fighter. She had battled cancer for 3 years with a grace and strength that still awed me. She never let it define her, but she never pretended it wasn't a battle she had to fight every single day. What would she say if she saw me now? She would be furious at what they had done, yes, but she would be even more disappointed if I let them win. If I let them break me, she would tell me to stand up, to straighten my spine, and to fight. I put the phone down. The wave of despair receded, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They had picked the wrong woman to mess with. They thought they were targeting the anxious, grieving girl I had once been. They hadn't counted on the fact that I was my mother's daughter. I started a new routine: work, gym, therapy. My therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Anya Sharma, whom I met with via video calls, became my lifeline. She helped me understand the psychology of what I was experiencing. She gave me names for Mark's behavior, gaslighting, emotional abuse, coercive control. She taught me grounding techniques for when the anxiety and rage threatened to overwhelm me. "Focus on your breath, Clara," she would say. "Feel your feet on the floor. You are here. You are safe. Their words are just noise. They cannot harm you here." Meanwhile, Ben was a machine. He hired a digital forensics expert who produced a sworn affidavit confirming that the application had been submitted from Mark's parents' IP address and that the files on my laptop had been accessed at that time. He deposed my Chicago-based manager at Omnicorp, who confirmed that the tone of the cover letter was completely out of character for me and that my performance reviews had been stellar, making the sudden, desperate request for a demotion in disguise highly suspicious. The most crucial piece of evidence, however, came from an unexpected source. A cousin of Mark's, a young woman named Sarah, whom I had always liked, reached out to me. She sent a tentative email. "Clara, I don't know if I should be doing this, but I can't stay quiet. I heard Chloe bragging about the prank at a family dinner a week before you left. She was laughing about how she found your password and was going to send you to the middle of nowhere. She said she wanted to see if Mark loved you enough to follow you. It was sick. I'm so sorry. If you need me to, I will testify to this." I stared at the email, tears welling in my eyes. It was the first crack in their united front, the first voice from that world that validated my reality. This wasn't just about getting me out of the way. It was a twisted loyalty test for Mark, with my life as the collateral damage. I forwarded the email to Ben. His response was immediate. "This is it, Clara. This is the evidentiary turning point. Her bragging establishes clear intent and malice. She can't dismiss this as a joke gone wrong anymore." The defense team, funded by Mark's wealthy father, tried to retaliate. They filed a motion to have the case dismissed, claiming it was a frivolous lawsuit born of a lover's quarrel. They offered a laughably small settlement, contingent on me signing a non-disclosure agreement and issuing a public apology for the distress my lawsuit had caused their family. Ben's response was swift and brutal. He not only rejected the offer but filed a counter motion for sanctions against their legal team for filing in bad faith. He attached Sarah's affidavit and the digital forensics report. The judge denied their motion to dismiss and, in a move that I'm sure sent shockwaves through their camp, granted our motion for sanctions. The message was clear. The court was taking this seriously. The offer of a settlement suddenly became much more substantial. They were scared, but it still came with strings. They're offering a significant six-figure sum, Ben told me. But the NDA is still on the table. They want your silence. They want to be able to continue telling the world that you were the crazy one, and you just took their money. "No," I said without a moment's hesitation. "No, NDA. I don't care about the money as much as I care about the truth. I want this to go to a deposition. I want her to have to answer for what she did, on the record." Ben was silent for a beat. Then he said, "I was hoping you'd say that. Get ready, Clara. It's going to be ugly, but we're going to win." The weeks leading up to the deposition were a strange mix of intense preparation and numbing routine. By day, I was the senior logistics coordinator for Omnicorp Anchorage, finding surprising surprising satisfaction in streamlining the flow of goods in and out of the state. I became an expert in the unique challenges of Arctic shipping. I made work friends. I learned which coffee shop had the best espresso and where to see the northern lights. I was building a life, a real one, piece by painful piece. By night, I was a warrior in training. Ben and I would spend hours on video calls, going over every piece of evidence. He prepped me for the deposition with a relentless, almost brutal methodology. He played the role of Chloe's lawyer, firing questions at me designed to provoke, belittle, and discredit me. Miss Evans, isn't it true that you have a history of anxiety and emotional instability? He'd ask, his voice dripping with faux sympathy. I have a history of successfully managing anxiety that stemmed from a significant personal loss, I would reply, my voice steady, just as Dr. Sharma had coached me. It has no bearing on the facts of this case. Isn't it true you overreacted to what was clearly a childish prank? That you abandoned your 5-year relationship in a fit of heat? No. I reacted appropriately to a calculated act of fraud and identity theft. I ended a relationship when I realized my partner was complicit in that act. We went over and over it. He taught me to be precise, to be factual, to not get drawn into emotional arguments. Answer only the question that is asked, he drilled into me. Do not volunteer information. Do not justify yourself. State the facts. We have the evidence on our side. Your only job is to be a calm, credible witness to your own experience. The deposition was scheduled to take place via video conference, a concession to the geography. I would be in a sterile conference room in a law office in Anchorage. They would be in a similar room in Chicago. When the day came, I woke up with a knot of ice in my stomach. I put on a simple, dark blue blouse and tailored pants, the armor of professionalism. I sat at the long, polished table, my laptop open, a glass of water and a notepad, my only companions. Ben was a reassuring presence in a small window on the screen, patched in from his home office. Then, their windows appeared. First, their lawyer, a slick, silver-haired man named Mr. Henderson. Then Mark's parents, their faces tight with anxiety. Then Mark, looking thinner, paler, with dark circles under his eyes. He wouldn't meet my gaze. And finally, Chloe. She was dressed in a demure, almost childish dress, her hair pulled back. She looked young and scared. It was a carefully crafted image, the picture of innocence. But her eyes, when they briefly flickered toward the camera, held the same cold, watchful intelligence I remembered. The formal confrontation had begun. Mr. Henderson started with me. For 2 hours, he grilled me. He brought up my mother's death. He tried to twist my grief into a narrative of long-term instability. He read aloud texts I had sent Mark years ago during a moment of sadness, trying to paint me as needy and emotionally volatile. With every question, I felt a surge of rage, but I pushed it down. I heard Dr. Sharma's voice in my head. Breathe. Feet on the floor. State the facts. I heard Ben's voice. Answer the question. Only the question. I gave calm, concise answers. I refused to take the bait. I could see the frustration mounting on Henderson's face. I wasn't the hysterical woman he had been paid to portray. Then, it was Chloe's turn. Ben was the one asking the questions now. He started gently. Chloe, can you please state your name for the record? Chloe Peterson, she said, her voice a near whisper. And you are currently 16 years old. Is that correct? Yes. He led her through the timeline of her father's marriage to Mark's mother, of her moving into the family home. He was lulling her into a sense of security. Then he pivoted. Chloe, are you familiar with an entity called Omnicorp? It's where Clara used to work, she said, glancing at me for a fraction of a second. Where she works, Ben corrected gently. She is still an employee. Now, on the evening of September 12th, did you access Clara's work laptop? A flicker of panic in her eyes. I don't remember. You don't remember? Ben's voice was still soft, but it had a new edge. Let me refresh your memory. We have a forensic report from a certified expert that shows the laptop was accessed at 8:14 p.m. that evening. The user navigated to Omnicorp's internal career portal. Were you that user, Chloe? Henderson jumped in. Objection. Counsel is leading the witness. Overruled. This is a deposition, came the flat voice of the court reporter. Please answer the question, miss. Chloe looked at her lawyer, who gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. Mark and I were just looking at it. We were joking around. Joking around? Ben repeated. And what did this joking entail? We saw the job in Alaska and thought it was funny. It was so far away. And at what point did you decide to fill out the application in Clara's name? Ben asked. It was just a joke. We didn't think it would do anything, she mumbled, her voice getting smaller. That's not what I asked, Ben said, his voice hardening. I asked when you decided to fill it out. Was it your idea, or was it Mark's? She looked at Mark, a silent plea in her eyes. Mark was staring at the table, his face ashen. He was offering her no help. He was saving himself. It was my idea, she whispered. And did you write a cover letter? I think so. You think so? Ben's voice was sharp now. Let me show you what is marked as Exhibit C. He shared his screen. There it was, the humiliating, gushing letter she had written. Did you write this, Chloe? She stared at it. Yes. And in this letter, you wrote that Clara was seeking to escape a stifling personal situation. What did you mean by that? I don't know. It was just words. They're your words, Chloe, Ben pressed. Were you referring to her relationship with your stepbrother, Mark? Objection! Henderson shouted. Answer the question, Ben commanded. Chloe started to cry. They were real tears this time. Hot tears of fear and humiliation. I wanted to see. I wanted to see what he would do, she sobbed. Everyone loved Clara so much. I wanted to see if he loved her enough to leave everything for her. I wanted to see if I was important too. There it was. The confession. Not a gloating monologue, but a pathetic, whimpering admission born of jealousy and insecurity. It was all about her. My life, my career, my 5-year relationship. They were just props in her twisted psychodrama to gauge her her own place in the family hierarchy. Ben wasn't finished. He brought up Sarah's affidavit. Chloe, is it true that you bragged to your cousin Sarah about this prank a full week before you revealed it to Clara? She stopped crying, her face paling. She knew she was caught. Yes, she whispered. So this wasn't a spontaneous joke, Ben concluded, his voice like the snap of a closing trap. This was a premeditated act, which you planned, executed, and then bragged about. Is that correct? Chloe just nodded, covering her face with her hands. I looked at Mark's window on the screen. He was staring at Chloe, not with sympathy, but with a look of pure, unadulterated fury. He was furious that she had confessed, that she hadn't been a good enough liar to protect him. In that moment, any lingering shred of affection I might have had for him hurtled and died. He wasn't a victim of his sister's manipulations. He was a willing, and now cowardly, participant. The deposition ended shortly after that. Mr. Henderson looked like he had swallowed a hornet. Ben's face was impassive. My own was a mask. I logged off, closed my laptop, and sat in the silent conference room for a long time. It wasn't a triumphant feeling. It was a hollow, aching emptiness. I had won. I had gotten the truth on the record, but the cost had been immense. The life I had thought was real had been proven to be a facade, and the people I had loved were strangers. The settlement offer that came in the next day was an order of magnitude larger than the previous one, and this time, it had no strings attached. No NDA, no apology required from me. They were offering a substantial sum of money in exchange for me dropping the suit and making it all go away. It was, as Ben put it, shut up and go away money. They're terrified, he explained. That deposition was a catastrophe for them. Chloe confessed to everything, and Mark's silence made him look guilty as sin. If this goes to trial, a jury would crucify them. The damages could be astronomical, not to mention the public humiliation. This offer is their panic button. We spent a long time discussing it. Part of me, the part that had been sharpened to a fine point by this whole ordeal, wanted to see it through to a trial. I wanted to watch them squirm in a public courtroom. I wanted a judge to declare, in no uncertain terms, what they had done. But another part of me was just so tired. Tired of the fight. Tired of the anger. Tired of my life being defined by this one awful act of betrayal. A trial would mean months, maybe years. More of this. More legal fees. More emotional turmoil. More of my energy being poured into their black hole of dysfunction. What do you think I should do? I asked Ben. My job as your lawyer is to advise you on the legal risks and rewards, he said carefully. A jury is always a gamble. This settlement is a sure thing. It's a significant financial victory. My job as your uncle, he added, his voice softening, is to tell you that you've already won the important battle. You got the truth. You exposed them. You stood up for yourself. Maybe it's time to take the win and use it to build your new life, free of them. He was right. Justice wasn't about punishing them as severely as possible. It was about reclaiming my own life. Continuing the fight would mean staying tethered to them. Accepting the settlement was a way to sever the final cord. Okay, I said, a sense of peace settling over me for the first time in months. Let's take it. The legal process of finalizing the settlement was impersonal and swift. Wires were transferred. Papers were signed by proxy. I never had to see or speak to any of them again. The final document was a simple dismissal of the case. It was over. The verdict, in a sense, was both a victory and a profound disappointment. It was a bittersweet resolution. I had received a sum of money that would change my life, a tacit admission of their guilt. But there was no public judgment, no court-ordered apology. Chloe would likely face some family consequences, but she would never have a criminal record for what she did. Mark would go on with his life, forever able to spin the story to his advantage among those who didn't know the truth. The justice was incomplete. I talked about it with Dr. Sharma. I feel like I should be celebrating, I told her, but I just feel empty. That's because the legal resolution isn't the same as an emotional one, she explained. The legal system provided a consequence. It did not and cannot provide healing. The settlement gives you resources, but the work of processing the trauma and the grief is separate. You're grieving the end of a relationship, the loss of a future you thought you had, and the betrayal of trust. That's a process that doesn't end when a judge signs a paper. Her words helped me reframe it. The lawsuit was the practical part. The financial settlement was the tool. The real work, the rebuilding of my life, was now up to me, and so I began. The first thing I did was quit my job at Omnicorp. My boss, Maria, was sad to see me go but understood. You were always a bit of a strange fit up here, she said with a wry smile, like a racehorse pulling a milk cart. You're meant for bigger things. The severance from Omnicorp, combined with the settlement money, gave me a freedom I had never known. I decided to stay in Alaska, not because I was forced to, but because I chose to. In the midst of all the chaos, I had found a strange peace in the stark, wild beauty of the place. The vast landscapes, the endless sky, it all put my own problems into perspective. It was a place without history for me, a blank slate. I used a portion of the settlement to buy a small, cozy house with a big window that looked out over the Chugach Mountains. I adopted a dog from the local shelter, a scruffy mutt I named Ben, in honor of my uncle. We went for long hikes in the mountains, the silence broken only by the wind and our footsteps in the snow. The process of rebuilding was slow and practical. I continued with therapy. I found a new job, a challenging and exciting role with a sustainable energy startup, a company whose mission I actually believed in. It was a step up from my Chicago job, the very thing Chloe and Mark's stunt was designed to prevent. The irony was not lost on me. I also established permanent, non-negotiable boundaries. I blocked Mark, his parents, Chloe, and any of their enablers on my phone and all social media. I sent one final, brief email to the few mutual friends who had reached out with genuine concern, explaining simply that the matter was resolved and that I was moving on with my life, but that I could not have any contact with Mark or his family. It was a clean, final severance. There are still scars. Sometimes, on a quiet night, the memory of Mark's laughing face or the coldness in Chloe's eyes will surface. I feel a phantom ache for the life I thought I was building, for the man I thought I loved. The trauma of the betrayal, the deep wound of being so completely misjudged and devalued by someone you trusted implicitly, doesn't just vanish, it becomes a part of your topography, a canyon you learn to navigate. But the ache is less frequent now. It's duller. More often, I feel a sense of profound gratitude. Gratitude for my own resilience, for the fierce loyalty of my uncle, for the kindness of my therapist, for the unexpected beauty of my new home. In a way, Chloe's malicious act was a gift. It was a violent, painful shove out of a life that was built on a weak and rotten foundation. She meant to send me to a frozen wasteland, to break my spirit. She thought she was writing my tragic ending. But instead, she inadvertently wrote my beginning. My new life isn't the one I planned. It's quieter, more deliberate, and tinged with a wisdom I paid a heavy price to acquire. Last week, on the one-year anniversary of my arrival in Alaska, I didn't think about Mark or the anniversary we were supposed to have. Instead, I hiked up a trail with Ben the dog to a ridge overlooking the ocean. The sky was a riot of pink and orange as the sun set. I sat on a cold rock, my dog's head in my lap, and I looked out at the vast, open horizon. I was alone, but for the first time in a very long time, I was not lonely. I was free. I was home. The air was cold and clean, and as I breathed it in, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I had survived. I was scarred, yes, but I was whole. And my future, for the first time, was entirely my own.